Hey everybody, so today we're going to be diving in to the Risk of Rain 2 Seekers of the Storm DLC. It released 3 new survivors, which was originally teased to be only 2, along with 6 maps, 3 new enemies, including a new boss, and a myriad of new items which we will all get into in this video. Let's start off with the survivors. The first one you unlock by buying the DLC is called the Seeker. She's a versatile survivor with soul manipulation abilities, it says. Her primary fire is called Spirit Punch. It fires disembodied fists at enemies for 200% damage. Every third hit explodes, dealing 300% damage and increases in damage. Not quite sure what that means, but when we tested it out, it seemed pretty good, and it is stackable with attack speed boosting items such as Soldier Syringe and Mocha. Here's what it looks like with about 11 Mochas on hand. It's pretty fast, and I'd say they're definitely worth it. You do not have to hit enemies with the first 2 shots in order for the third one to explode. It's just every third shot that you do in a row. So if you stop shooting, it will stop the pattern. Her secondary is called Unseen Hand. Stunning, launch a phantasmal hand from the ground, dealing 600% damage, drain and slow, and damage enemies. Heals for every target hit. Her alternate secondary is called Soul Spiral, where she manifests rotating orbs, dealing 100% damage per second and gaining a temporary barrier when passing through enemies. She can have up to 6 orbs rotating around her at a time, and it definitely seems like the better secondary. It's gained pretty easily by hitting 3 things that are in the air with a third exploding shot of your primary attack. Her utility is called Sojourn. It's also stunning. Transform and take flight as a volatile flame. Explode, dealing 550% damage. Exchange 20% damage per second of flight for increased damage. Basically what that means is after a certain amount of time while flying, you will start to take damage, and I believe that will ramp up the damage you will do on explosion. I'm not quite sure how long you can fly for, but I do know that it ends whenever you touch the ground. You are also able to cancel this ability, which will explode on enemies, dealing massive amounts of damage. And then her special is called Meditate. Execute time sequences to blast enemies for 450% damage, heal nearby allies, and gain tranquility. The 7th tranquility grants revive and saving grace. This is a very strong ability that is sort of like Dance Dance Revolution if you are old like me and know what that is, where you have to press the WAS and D or movement keys in the order that it asks you to in order to gain the buffs and healing. The lotus in the bottom right of the screen shows you how many charges you have on that ability, and if failed, it will not give you another charge, but once you get up to 7, like it says, it will revive any dead enemies. Our question was, do you need to be near your ally to revive them? And that is a no. You can revive them from anywhere on the map, which is sort of strong. Now, these lotuses do reset every stage, but so does the revive ability. You can use it once per stage. Overall, I'd give her a solid 8 out of 10. She seems fairly strong. As far as utility goes, she's very versatile, in which 3 out of her 4 abilities do stop her from taking things like fall damage. There just seems to be a lot you can do with these abilities that is not intended. The second new character being added, or maybe re-added, I guess, depending on how old of a fan you are, is Chef. Chef's passive ability is called Chef's Kiss. Killing enemies with 2 or more skills cooks them up and drops a healing food item. His primary fire is called Dice, where you throw a cleaver through enemies for 250% damage. Use again to recall the cleaver, dealing 375% damage on the return trip. This attack is pretty standard. I personally don't recommend using it with things that really increase the firing speed because he just runs out of ammo so quickly, but it's all personal preference. Secondary fire is Sear. Scorch nearby enemies for 600% damage, inflicts burn on targets. Glazed enemies take 75% extra damage. So this is basically just a small flamethrower that you have in your pocket. It's pretty good. It's one of the main parts of his kit that makes him such a valuable character. His utility is called Roll, where he rolls around in his rolling pin. He charges the rolling pin to speed forward, dealing 500 to 800% damage and stunning any enemy he hits. Sort of similar to Multi's Dash, but it seems like it does more damage. And then his special is called Glaze, where he fires globs of oil in quick succession, dealing 7 times 200% damage, slowing and weakening enemies. That means this attack has 7 projectiles, each one does 200% damage, and this is what coats them in Glaze, in which the Sear comes in very useful. Overall, I didn't play much of this character, but he seems really fun and really enjoyable. I'd give him a 7 out of 10, simply because Seeker is very valuable to play with a team, and both these guys are similar to play on your own as far as utility and survivability. Now for the final and arguably coolest character, the False Sun. This is basically a playable version of the new boss that is being added with the DLC. His passive ability, called Lunar Tampering, says that every unused lunar spike gives him plus 5% attack speed, 2.5% armor. A used spike gives 5% movement speed, and 2.5 health regeneration. My first thought when I saw these is, would this or would this not be broken with enough backup magazines? But that's just me. His primary, Club of the Forsaken. Hold the primary button to swing the False Sun's club at nearby enemies for 300% damage, and then hold the primary and secondary buttons to charge a slam for 1500% damage. Now, will the charge just take a decent amount of time to get fully charged up? If you can stack some things like Tougher Times or Bustling Fungus to keep you alive during that charge, it would be very useful. Now, his secondary, Lunar Spikes. Throw a Lunar Spike for 150% damage, gain additional Lunar Spikes through growth. So over time, these will recharge. You start out with 4 charges of Lunar Spikes, which unused gives you plus 20% attack speed and 2.5 armor. That's what that passive we were talking about does. His utility is called Step of Brothers. Dash a short distance, generating an explosion for 200% damage for every enemy hit. 2 uses. These dashes don't have quite as much range as other characters, but seeing as they can go through enemies, it is still very useful for his kit. And then his special, Laser of the Father. Charge up to 1.5 seconds to fire a rapidly hitting laser for 30 to 175% damage for 4 seconds, and refills lunar spikes. Increases duration through growth. This special is how you unlock his alternate ability for his utility, which I don't have yet, but it is by killing 15 enemies with one single blast of Laser of the Father. Just looking at this character, you can tell just how much aura he has, and as that reason alone, I'll be giving him a 9 out of 10. He is by far the coolest character to be added to the DLC, in my opinion. After talking about new characters to be added, it feels only right to talk about the monsters next. Now, there are 4 of them that have been added. The first of which is called the Child, which seems to be an extra small version of the grandparent. Not much is known about the Child, however, it does not seem so formidable, nothing that we really had to worry about on our plays through. The second monster to be added is called the Scorch Worms. Think of these as like a mini magma worm that come out of the ground and just kind of sit there and do their own little thing. Once again, not so formidable. Now here comes the big one. The Halcyonite. I know I'm saying it wrong. I don't give a fuck. This is the mini-boss that spawns whenever you do the Halcyon Shrine. It may also spawn at random stages, as do other bosses. We're not too sure how this guy works, but from what we tested, if you do not do the Halcyon Shrine on the first stage, it becomes incredibly difficult to do it on the 6th stage. By that I mean it just seemed to scale faster than everything else. That could have just been a scale issue though. Now the final monster is only sort of a monster. It is the new boss called the False Sun. I'll get into him more later when I cover the boss. Along with those 4 monsters are 2 new shrines. The first one being the Halcyon Shrine. This shrine can spawn in the first map of every playthrough, or the 6th, whenever you go back to the start of the route. You guys know what I'm getting at. It spawns in the first one. Doing this, it will sap the gold from you, and it will spawn a Halcyonite. Once you kill the Halcyonite, a green portal will spawn, taking you on the route to get to the False Sun. So long as you keep taking these green portals, every time you do a teleporter event, it will keep you on that path to the False Sun. But the second you click the teleporter normally, it will take you back out and throw you into the game as it would usually. The second shrine is called the Shrine of Shaping. This one takes 30% of your max HP and gives you boosted regen. This 30% of your HP is not regeneratable for the rest of the stage, but the boosted regen is a buff for the rest of the stage. It's up to you. It didn't really give us that much trouble, but we definitely didn't expect it when we hit the button. We're just going to breeze right on into the 2 new elite variants as well. The first one being the Gilded Elite. Now, there's no description on the wiki for what these do yet, but from our experience, the Gilded seem to sap your gold and only give it back to you once you kill them. These also have a ridiculous amount of health. We don't have any information on the second one called the Twisted, but as soon as we do, I'll let you guys know. They've also added 6 new environments. The Reformed Altar, which is typically the first stage you go into after the green portal, is described as an ancient ruins in a massive sandy cavern. This is where you would unlock Chef. by going into a cave and bringing him these certain items that he needs. From what we've seen, it is usually an infusion, a bison steak, and a cautious slug. So have those on hand if you plan on going here. The second stage in the green route is the Treeborn Colony. It's this map I'm showing you right now. It's a bunch of islands connected by roots and vines. It is described as a set of treetop platforms. Very easy to fall off on. Now, the dopest looking one, and the one I have not seen yet, unfortunately, is the Helminth Hatchery. I'll show you a picture right now. It's a dark castle with a crimson color scheme and a possible Ifrit skull. I'm also not sure what that means, seeing as I haven't been there, but it looks the coolest. I would not be surprised if this one can only be seen in the normal track instead of the green path, because we've only taken the green portal path so far. The Shattered Abodes. This is the one where I was fighting the Halcyonite on stage 11 for 30 minutes, so trust me, I know this one very well. It is described as an ancient Lemurian temple in ruins with craters from spike-themed explosions. Whatever the hell that means. And then Prime Meridian. This stage is a set of pathways, including the false sun on a large floating structure, inside of a massive storm. It rains down lightning, dealing damage and inflicting lunar ruin. There's also a store on the way up to the false sun, where you can buy red items similar to right before you go up to Mythix's arena. And the final stage is sort of a mystery stage. It is just described as unknown. Nobody's seen it, but everyone knows it's there somewhere. I don't know how, but if any of you guys find it, please let me or somebody know. This is a mystery in the community, I guess. Not quite the last subject we're going to cover, but this one has the most topics in it. Right now I'm going to go through the new items that were released in the DLC. To start off with gray items, the first one is the Warped Echo. The description of this is, on damage taken, 50% of the damage is dealt immediately, where the other 50% is delayed for 3 seconds. This effect has a cooldown of 10 seconds. Every additional item increases how many instances the player has. The second new gray item is called the Chronic Expansion. Every 5 enemies slain grants a damage counter bonus, increasing the player's damage by 10%, 5% per item stack, lasting as long as the player stays in combat. The Knockback Fin. Description, 7.5% plus 7.5% chance to knock back enemies into the air. Height increases per stack. The Bolstering Lantern, another gray item. The description is, when below 50 health, receive a damage increase of 20% and 20% damage bonus per item stack. And the last but certainly not the least gray item, the Antler Shield. The description is 55% plus 5% per stack chance on being hit to reflect 10% of the damage plus 10% per stack back to the attacker. As far as gray items go, I would say the Knockback Fin and the Chronic Expansion seem to be the two strongest ones in my opinion, but you guys let me know what your builds would be for those to maybe prove me wrong. Moving on to green items, the first one is called the Chance Doll. 20% plus 8% per stack, chance to get a higher rarity items from Chance of Shrine on success. Seems very good if you stack up a lot of them, you could really easily get red items. But I also don't know if that luck would boost the chance of you getting a higher item, or boost the chance of upgrading your item by 1 stage, if you know what I'm saying. The next green item is called Prayer Beads. The description is, it grows in power by absorbing experience, storing 20% plus 5% per item stack of players' stats per item on level up. On removal, gain all stored stats. The next green item is called the Luminous Shot. The description is, using the secondary skill, charges up the next primary attack, dealing 150% extra damage, plus 25 per item stack. Per charge, up to 5 times, plus 1 per item stack. This one is one of my personal favorites. It's another green item called the Sail Star. Gain an extra item on the first chest opened per stage. Each additional Sail Star increases the chance of getting more items by 5%. This one's very good to use on things like legendary chests or even just large chests, as it basically gives you double the value of the chest. This one is another phenomenal green item called the Unstable Transmitter. The description is, when reaching below 25% health, the survivor explodes, dealing 350% damage plus 350% per item stack to nearby enemies and teleporting to a random location. This effect has a cooldown of 2 minutes, minus 5% per item stack. This has saved my life so many times in the last run, it's not even funny. And the final green item, called the Noxious Thorn, the description is, a 25% chance on being hit to inflict nearby enemies with 2, plus 1 per stack, stacks of bleed. If enemies are already inflicted with one or more stackable debuffs, add 1, plus 1 per stack, to those debuffs instead. Now the big kahunas, we are moving on to the red items. First and foremost being the Growth Nectar. The description of the Growth Nectar is, while benefiting from 5 plus unique buffs, gain 20% plus 20% per stack bonus stats for 5 seconds. This one seems interesting. We never really got it to work too well, but with the right build it could be very powerful. The War Bonds. This one's an interesting one. It yields 75 gold plus 25 gold per item stack based on the current difficulty level and the survival's level at the start of the stage. So basically, the farther you are in the game, the more gold it will give you. It's only a red item I'd really get if I already had a couple. I'd never make this my first choice. Now for the red item that confused me the most, the Runic Lens. The description is Overspill. A 5% chance, plus 1% per 100% done on initial hit, plus 1% per item stack. Wow. On hit, to summon a meteor on the target, dealing 2,000% damage. 50% damage per 100% damage done on the initial hit, plus 50% damage per item stack. See, I thought reading that description would help me figure it out. No, it's done nothing for me. I'm still just as confused as what this does. It has a chance to summon a meteor for a lot of damage. The second to last red item is called the Sonorous Whispers. The description: when a large monster is killed, it will always drop an item. All elites have a 15% chance of dropping an item, plus 5% per stack. And the final red item is called the Electric Boomerang. The description is a 15% chance on hit to fire an electric boomerang that travels a short distance before returning, dealing 30%, plus 30% per stack, damage, and stunning all enemies hit. This one was pretty nice, but again, it's not an item I would get right off the rip. It's one I'd wait till I had a couple beforehand. Now, the final new item in the DLC is a gold item. It is called the Seed of Life. The description is: it revives the user when killed or dead allies on activation, consumed on use. Once it is consumed, it will throw it on a plant that will heal you over time. This gold item is very, very strong. It takes precedence over a Dio. So if you have one of these on and you die while also having a Dio equipped, it will use this instead of using the Dio. And it can also be used to revive allies. Now, the final thing, and what I know you were all waiting for, the new boss. The new boss is called the False Sun, and you can get to him by going through the green portals that you find by using the Halcyon Shrines. So long as you continue to go through the green portals, it will take you to his arena. His fight is not that difficult. It's pretty straightforward, almost similar to Mithrix in some ways. The only tricky part is that in the end, in his final stage, he stops you from using any of your abilities or primary fire until you crack a geode in order to get your abilities back. During this phase, he will be summoning things and chasing you around, and if you have a Halcyon Seed, he will steal it and use it for himself. Now, if you're trying to get the False Sun as a character, don't worry, this is how he has to do it. But our method for beating him easily was by using Rejuvenation Rack, Nikuna, and Little Disciples. This combination of items allowed us to run around without having to attack, but still be able to deal damage to the boss at the same time. Overall, it was really fun. Anyway, that is all that we discovered about the new Seekers of the Storm DLC. Please let me know if I missed anything. Be sure to check out my other videos below for one you might enjoy, and thank you so much for watching.